All right, good evening. We're going to go ahead and call to order the workshop session of the governing body of the City of Lampasas. The first item on our workshop agenda this evening is discussion regarding draft ordinance for commercial parking in residential areas. I want to mention last time before we tabled this item, we actually had an individual call in on the phone number that wanted to discuss it, so I want to be sure that we give that number out to those that are viewing from home. That number is 512-556-0332. We do have an action item later on this, so if you have questions regarding the ordinance and Chief Bailey's process, go ahead and ask them now. Everyone's pleased with the changes? Thank you, Chief. Item number 3, discussion and updates relating to Business Park Phase 1 development and financing.
There we go. All right. Good evening. Okay, I'll try to keep this fairly brief. This is really just an update based on the joint session between City Council and the EDC when you had given direction to staff to research the grant opportunity. Since that meeting, we have discussed the EDA, the Economic Development Administration's CARES Act, with our grant writers at Langford Community Management Services. What that is Congress appropriated $1.5 billion to strengthen and assist communities recovering from the coronavirus pandemic. So the EDA is accepting applications for grants that support a wide variety of projects, including infrastructure, construction of infrastructure, and economic development projects. So that's what we're going to be applying for, is the disaster funding through the EDA. The grants are awarded on a rolling basis. They started accepting applications in May. Our grant writer seems to think that it's a pretty quick turnaround. They've been really efficient, just in a manner that meets the needs of the communities. Under the CARES Act recovery assistance, they generally expect to fund up to at least 80%, some of them up to 100% of the eligible project costs. So therefore, we'd be required to match 20% at the most. Langford anticipates everything being packaged and ready to submit for this grant application by the end of July. We could get it together quicker than that, but she said at the end of July for sure. We'll have a kickoff call actually this week. If y'all remember the total cost of construction that we had for Phase 1, the estimated cost was $1.9 million. Keep in mind that there's a 10% contingency that's included in that as well. It's built in. In addition to the grant funding, we did meet last week with the EDC, and we had Ryan Shahan with Bancorp South come and meet with us. Based on our conversation with Specialized Public Finance, they had recommended speaking with a local bank. And so Ryan Shahan came and discussed a loan proposal to the EDC. They proposed $1.1 million with the 20-year AM and refinancing the current note. So this would be rolled into the current debt that we have right now. We still owe $1.3 million, but it would be the same interest rate and terms. And it would extend that current loan for 10 years, so it would be to March of 2040. So the EDC basically unanimously agreed to hold off on the loan for now so that we can pursue the grant opportunity. So like I said, we're meeting with Langford. We're going to have a kickoff call this week. We're going to start packaging up the application to the EDA for the CARES Act, and we'll provide updates as we move along.
I think it's important that we note to council that in the event that we do receive the 80% funding, the EDC currently has probably the funds to cover the 20% within its designated funds for the business park already.
So that is correct. We have approximately $418,000 in our account in cash, but then we have an additional $488,000 that's restricted to the development of the business park.
Council have any questions or suggestions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 4, discussion and updates regarding fiscal year 2021 budget.
Mayor and Council, my comments will be brief. We are in the process of our internal review. I believe staff has done their job of projecting year-end numbers as well as initial budget projections. We do have a lot of work to do in regards to that. The next milestone that we have that I think is a very important piece of the budget process for council is the CIP report. Right now we're targeted to deliver that to you on July 13th. The CIP committee will meet this Thursday, and it's our intention to get their blessing on a draft narrative. The narrative is, I think, particularly helpful to council because it will outline normally the 3 or 4 points of emphasis that they see or they think are compelling budget projects. I just want to also forewarn council that we are going to be seeing some impacts of new grandbabies and new in weddings out of town. We're going to work through that and try to meet all of the deadlines possible, but a couple of between myself and Yvonne, we're going to be out of pocket for a little bit first part of July. We are open to, in the event council wanted to take a bite out of the CIP, or at least take a look at what the draft narrative might be. Staff would certainly be open to having a workshop-style meeting on the 29th, which is next Monday, if council had a desire to do that. Those are my brief comments, and be anxious to hear your input.
Does council wish to meet next Monday?
I'm not available.
Ms. Monroe is not available. Would you prefer to wait until it's complete and take it all on the 13th?
Either way is fine with me.
Let's just keep it on the 13th.
Will we get a list prior to the meeting?
I believe you should direct your question to staff, please.
I said, would we get a list prior to the meeting for the CIP?
Should get a report at the meeting. We will try to have a bound copy to you before the meeting.
Okay.
Next item on the workshop agenda is discussion and updates regarding COVID-19, city response, and statistics. I think that's you, Chief.
I got to get my glasses and get my notes. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I wanted to update you currently on what's going on with COVID-19 within the state and also within the area and also the city of Lampasas. Statewide, we currently have 40,920 active cases of COVID-19. All the cases that I'm going to be speaking about tonight, they're going to be active cases, no longer keeping up with the amount of aggregate cases, those that have come over, they're not active anymore, anything like that. We're just dealing with active cases now as far as how we're tracking this. 3,409 patients currently require hospitalization at this time. This is a little bit over 8% of the active cases. There are currently 14,316 hospital beds available at this time in the entire state, 1,493 ICU beds, and then 5,800 ventilators available also. Looking closer to home, Lampasas, the area is served by the Trauma Service Area L. The other counties involved in this are Mills, Coryell, Hamilton, Bell, and Milam. There are 20 COVID-19 hospitalized patients in our area. There are 259 available beds and 26 ICU beds. 136 ventilators are available. The other service area that's closest to us would encompass Williamson County and also Travis County. I've included those because they're the closest ones, the big cities and everything like that, to give you a little bit of perspective once we get into the bigger counties with us. That's Trauma Area O. The area contains most notably Williamson and Travis counties. They currently have 196 COVID-19 patients hospitalized with 786 available beds. So what's all the recent talk about the resurgence of COVID-19? Well, there are several things. On June 1st, we had 1,756 COVID-19 patients that required hospitalization. Today, on the 22nd, we have 3,409. That's a 94% increase. These are hospitalized patients. These are not just active cases. These are hospitalized patients. As we progress through this pandemic, we have gradually lengthened out the amount of days that it's taken to double the amount of positive cases. I think you remember I've reported on this, that they're measuring how long it takes for the cases to double. When we first started, they were doubling in a week. They were doubling in 2 weeks. And we got up and we worked our way through to where we were doubling over a period of 28 days, a period of 30 days. And we just went to 32 days on June 15th. However, on June 20th, we began moving the opposite direction. Now we're doubling in 29 days. And then yesterday, we doubled in 28 days. So we're going backwards now. These are notes to make in your head. This is what the governor was talking about, how they're measuring things and how the COVID-19 is progressing. On June 1st, we were at 5.4% positivity rate for testing. A lot of discussion on positivity rate and what does that mean? Well, we're doing more testing, so therefore we're going to have more positive cases. This is all in relationship to how many tests that we actually do. So we had 5.4% on June 1st. Since then, we've been increasing our positivity rate, and we're now at 8.8%. We're at 8.8% currently. The high water mark on this, we were at 13.86%. That was on April 13th. Since that time, we were trending and got as low as 4.27% on May 26th. This is when, of course, Governor Abbott started reopening Texas. I'm not saying that he was wrong to reopen Texas. What I'm saying is that based on the trending numbers, we were coming down, and he saw that this was a good time to start reopening Texas, and it was. The numbers are trending downward. The positivity rate is there. The hospitalization rate, the doubling rate, all these things come up, and that tells us why we should be able to reopen Texas. The biggest issues, we've not maintained all of this. The biggest jump in demographics is the age range of new patients. In the beginning of the pandemic, the largest group of patients was between the age of 40 to 49 and 50 to 59. The most lethal range was in the older population, but the largest number of patients was in 40 to 49 and 50 to 59. Now the largest group is 30 to 39, and coming up quickly is 20 to 29, the ages of 20 to 29. So earlier today, Governor Abbott spoke and reminded us all that we were able to move forward with reopening Texas due to the low numbers. His concerns are that we are not remaining focused on the basics of social distancing, hand washing, and wearing a face covering when you're out in public and when you're not able to maintain that social distancing. He has urged everyone to stay vigilant about doing so. So what can we do in Lampasas? This last week has been a great week if you wanted to be a COVID patient in Lampasas. We have 10 active cases now in Lampasas. Throughout the entire pandemic up until last week, we didn't have but a total of 10 cases. More than likely, we will get more. We have a lot of upcoming activities. We have July 4th, we have Spring Hoe. We need to have the mindset that we had back at the beginning in the middle of April. At the beginning of April and then in the middle of March. We need to be aware of what all is going on and what we can do to protect ourselves and to protect others in that. We should be able to go out and enjoy life, and we should be able to go out and enjoy what we have here, but we need to be cautious, and we need to get back to practicing the fundamental basics of how to take care of ourselves. Wash your hands with soap and water. Use hand sanitizer as a substitute. Cover your coughs and sneezes. Avoid touching your face. Disinfect often touched surfaces. Avoid close contact, and wear a mask in public if you're not able to follow the social distancing guidelines. Does anybody have any questions for me at this time on COVID-19? Thank you.
Staying with that subject for just a moment, does council have any recommendations as far as recommendations to pass along to our public, to our businesses, or anything of the sort?
I think we need to encourage people to wear masks out in public when you can't social distance. I'm not seeing it a whole lot in town.
I do believe it's important that we stress to our business owners that it is well within their purview to require masks within their business if they so wish, and we would support that. In fact, we actually encourage that at this time. If you're going to be any place that maintaining a 6-foot social distance is not permissible, you need to have on a mask. It's not something we're looking at requiring. I know that there are cities across the state that are now putting in place ordinances that actually require that. I don't believe that's the consideration of this council at this time, but if things progress, that could be something we might need to discuss. Anything else regarding COVID from staff? All right, moving on to item number 6, discussion regarding report from Audit Committee regarding the fiscal year 2019 audit.
Mayor and Council, our audit committee met about a week ago, and T.J. Monroe and Councilman Clark were in attendance, and certainly I would lean on you two to chime in if I miss any items here. Our typical practice over the past several years is to have the auditor come in and visit with the audit committee. Typically, it's about an hour meeting where he reviews the audit, goes over pertinent numbers, discusses the city's financial statements in terms of their preparation and their accuracy, as well as highlights some things related to net position, changes in net position, fund balance, et cetera. On your summary page in your packet, there are 3 items that I carved out from his comments. One was that the audit is an unmodified opinion. The statements in the audit present fairly the respective financial positions of the city, which basically tells you as elected officials it is a clean audit. There was one item of note that was pointed out in March of 2019. Our deposits exceeded our pledged securities. Public Funds Investment Act requires us to have pledged securities to cover all of our deposits. In fact, as part of our depository agreement, we require 103% of our deposits as pledged. This was the case where we received some ad valorem revenue at one time. It was corrected. And the depository agreement that Council just approved within the last month or so, we've actually upped that. So it requires our depository to carry pledged securities 105% of our deposits. So that is something that happens. There's an influx of revenue at one time, and we feel like it has been corrected, and certainly the auditor felt the same way. In terms of fund balance, we just point out that, on non-capital expenses in the general fund, we have about 3.4 months worth of expenses. In the non-capital expenses for our enterprise funds, we have about 5.2 months of balance, and that's actually, we're probably in a little better than that, because by the time we have some funds that are restricted to O&M only, which is a very, it gives council a lot of latitude. So if in the event you had to use that for operating and maintenance of your system, I think that you could also consider that as a part of your fund balance. I want to comment just briefly on some of the impacts of the booking of our pension and OPEB liability, other post-employment benefits. You can see the impact that has if on page 8, our net position in the general fund, we actually have an unrestricted net position of a deficit of about $2.8 million. And it's just a comment that was made by the auditor as well, is that, that is a booked liability. It's not necessarily related to dollars in the bank. Doesn't mean that you don't have that money to spend. You take a look at some other portions of your audit to paint perhaps a clearer picture. The debt load, that's outlined on page 13. And you also have some great trends and great statistics over the last 10 years, beginning on page 107. But on page 13, the city's total debt is about $13.2 million. The audit does not normally address specific performance or management or operational items. They just say your financial statements are accurate based on what we've been able to test. But I probably would refer you for the general fund, page 27, that's the budget actual on the general fund. You had a net change in fund balance of $100,000, and you had about a $291,000 positive variance to budget. Page 29 as well, which is your revenue and expense and changes in net position on your enterprise funds. You had about almost a $500,000 positive change in the net position on those funds. The auditors are happy to attend if you have questions related to the audit. If you have specific questions related to one piece of the audit, they'd be happy to come in. You do have a corresponding action item to accept the audit on the regular agenda, and with that, I'd ask Mayor Pro Tem Monroe or Councilman Clark to chime in on anything I may have missed.
Nothing that you missed. I would just say congratulations to Yvonne and staff. I know how painful these things are, and they did a great job as well as you.
In her absence, I will say she does a hell of a job for us. So Yvonne
I
did a
was
great
about to chime in that this will be the 6th year in a row that we've got to commend the finance department and particularly Yvonne on our audit, so.
I will say that in going through this, and I asked several questions in the meeting, but I'm very pleased with it. I think Yvonne and the staff have done a great job. It wasn't anything like I had been told that it has been on our spending in the past. And I think as far as our revenue structures and our own hand monies, that we're still in pretty good shape. I was
I
very
agree.
pleased with it.
Council have anything else regarding the audit? Item number 7, discussion regarding operational and facility upgrades to Naruna substation.
Mayor and council, out there at the Naruna substation, back in 2008, whenever they built that thing, there was a lot of brush removal out there. So from the time that happened until now, that brush has grown back up. But there was a very decorative wall out there. I thought it looked real nice. And through the years, it has started deteriorating pretty well. I walked out there and looked at it after Matt from LCRA had explained it to me, and wow, I was surprised at how much of that concrete had been cracked and some of the walls were breaking down. But they have come up with a plan about putting a high-security metal mesh fence up there. I went out and looked at the one that's just outside of town towards 281. It's very nice looking. In my opinion, because I've been to several of those LCRA meetings and they were talking about the safety and stuff like that of them, they were always talking about they had those walls in the front, but in the back, they were just the regular metal fences, the chain link, and people would cut through those and get in, but you couldn't see them from the road, and they would get to cutting up the copper wire and stealing it and get away with it with no problem. Again, looking at that one out there on South 281, it was very nice. You drive by, you can see into it and be able to see it. There's a lot of upgrades also that they're doing out there with the security lights with it. Cameras I heard they're going to be putting out there. But also, again, when my guys pull up out there to that front gate, I sure would like for them to be able to see something inside there in case there is either a down line or somebody that's not supposed to be in there from the outside. So they didn't have to, safety reasons for it. But, I'd like Matt to speak. Sure.
I have a few notes. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Thank you for your invitation. I'm Matt Holland, Director of Line and Substation Operations. I'm here today at your request to discuss the Naruna substation upgrade. I'll go over the reasons and benefits for the new fence and the added security measures LCRA has implemented in our recent standards. And I'll also discuss the benefits for both LCRA employees and your city employees, as Flint has alluded to. So again, as Flint said, the reason we're doing it is concrete uprights. That decorative fence is made out of concrete. The lower portion of that concrete has started to deteriorate and bust and break away, which allows the fence to move, and those panels tend to slide out and they will fall out, which allow access to the substation, which we don't want. The advantages to our upgraded fence, the fence provides a significant advantage over a solid perimeter fence, such as the wall, which allows access to the fence for thieves to come in, steal copper, and have the wall as a barrier so you can't see in. The mesh will allow us to see in, passerbys to come in and report those problems to us or to local authorities. What we'll do, we'll go in, along with our fence, we install cameras, motion sensors, which is monitored through Austin, through our dispatch center, and also our control center. So when anybody approaches the gate, the cameras come on, motion, we see who it is. If it's an intruder, We'll dispatch rangers and local authorities to that facility. LCRA has seen a much lower crime rate such as these, as I talked to, as our preferred security package, which includes high security fencing compared to substations with normal chain link fence. This is a tighter mesh. You can't cut it with a set of bolt cutters. The bolt cutters, once you open those up wide enough, the mesh is so small you can't cut it. Not to say it can't be cut, but it's a little more difficult than chain link fence. High security fences help protect against impact hazards, improves liability, and keeping the public safe. Examples include vehicles leaving the roadway, impacting the fence, or heavy objects keeping the fence up. Again, I talked about our motion sensors, cameras. Lighting, we're going to change the lighting. We use LED lights, low profile lights now, which cover more ground. They're a little bit brighter, and they're not as bright as the normal street lights, which probably the city has already gone to. So with that, any questions, anything that I might be able to answer for you?
Yes, I would like the public to know that one of the negotiating points of putting that substation in that particular area, I understand that they have to go under the lines like that, the transmission lines, is where they have to be built. But for it to be built in that particular location, the properties owners around there were opposed to a substation, and one of the discussions that changed their mind about things was that it was agreed to put the decorative fence up there. I'm not familiar with the deterioration of it, and if it's a safety hazard, it probably needs to be fixed.
Yes, sir.
I just want to be aware that it's not something that the city council, we're not going back on our promise originally, that it's something that LCRA has to do for safety reasons.
Yes, sir. It is an upgrade. We will keep the vegetation. We'll clear it back from our fence, from our standards. What we have is our maintenance standards. We have a distance that we have to keep, but the green belt we will keep in place. Also, I'd like to share too, the gates out there now are steel. We've found over time with the weight of those gates, the hinges tend to tear off the steel posts, and we've had some fall. What we don't want them to do is fall on employees. Those are heavy steel gates. We're going to a lighter aluminum gate, and it's also, like we talked about, transparent. So you'll be able to see anything prior to entering that substation, any hazards that you might come across.
I just wanted to make the council aware that that was one of the agreements that we made to put the substation there. I realize through the years the material deteriorates.
And to the point of aesthetics, if any of you have noticed the facility on 281, it's a very nice looking fence and set up. So I can't imagine anybody having any issues with that.
Will the entrance stay where it is?
Yes, sir. Okay. What we plan to do, we'll leave the decorative fence in place. We'll just build the fence, our new fence inside that, and then tear down.
Tear down?
Yes, sir. At no time, the station will not be unsecured.
What is your timeline for the project?
It needs to go through approval. We want to discuss that with you, with the council first. There currently is construction going on there. That's reliability for the transmission system. What we want to do, we discovered the fence in its state, and what we want to do is incorporate both projects together. So I would say within the next 45 to 60 days, we can start.
Any other questions or comments from council? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item number 8 on the longest workshop agenda ever is discussion regarding Campbell Park improvements.
I'm Andy Fish, Lampasas Heritage Foundation, with Debbie Reynolds back here. We bring to you what we think is time to celebrate the foundation of Lampasas, which was 1853 Hannah Springs. And we believe the Hannah Springs needs enhancement. We have 10 propositions here, and I'll talk fast. Certainly want to
Let's be sure your microphone's on for the,
Certainly will be glad to address any questions that you have about these proposals. We met with the Parks Board last week. We had unanimous support on this. We met, it was presented to the LAFTA Board, and it's my understanding from them that with discussion on one item, everything else was unanimously approved. So to kind of go through them, the first thing is there's a chicken wire fence around the existing pool. We're not really sure when it was put there. We're not sure why it was put there because it wasn't required for any liability issue. And the picture that you see there, that fence is totally broken down. It serves no purpose whatsoever. And we are recommending removing the fence. We would like to have this fence removed by July the 1st or 2nd because that's when day trippers coming in to film Lampasas and put it on their television show, and we think that doesn't show very well for Lampasas. We have a contractor that has volunteered to make that removal of the 33 fence posts that are there, so it's not a cost would be incurred by the city. The second thing is that the tractor that is there, which is a art exhibit done by the children, in the CIP there's a proposal to build a stage / viewing area on that side, on the west side of the pool. And as such, the hill that you see behind there would be used as an amphitheater for musical events as well, in addition to it being used to view. So it was suggested that it be moved over to the area, to the children's area where it could be actually enjoyed. Since then, we've got a donor that is willing to build a concrete foundation to celebrate the tractor so that it actually appears as an art piece and can be utilized by the children. I can tell you, growing up in Austin, I climbed all over the fire engine that was down in Zilker Park. So anyway, this suggestion, again, would be based on LAFTA determining where in the park they would like to have it put. And at such time, then it could be moved to that point. The big item is constructing 3 wading pools that would be at the spillway of, the current spillway of the springs themselves. Now, a couple of reasons for this. One is that if you ever go down there during the summertime and look, you'll notice there are people trying to wade around in there and enjoy the water. The problem is that the stones that you see right there are sloped, and as such, they're slippery because of the moss that grows there. So what we're recommending is building 3 pools. You should have a drawing of those pools and a handout showing different sizes, starting with 12-foot diameter and going down to 8-foot diameter with shallow depths so the kids, safe for kids, and large enough for multiple people to be sitting around the pools. The fourth thing is that there is the foundation of the old bathhouse can be seen in the aerial photo in one of the printouts that's there. We'd like to excavate down about a foot or so to celebrate the history of this bathhouse being there. I'll point out that there were 2 bathhouses that were around that pond in the past. One in particular served for the 1892 Democratic State Convention because it was the largest building in Texas that had a wide open space. Anyway, this is actually the second bathhouse that you can see in the center bottom of your corner there. And so basically we just pull that down about a foot so you can actually see the walls, and then we'd apply signage to explain to people what this actually is. The wood pipe that fed the water to that bathhouse is over in the museum today. This gives context then to what that pipe is. The fifth thing is to add concrete tables and chairs under the trees in that area. Right now there's 1 bench down there. And again, if we're going to have a place for people to come sit down and relax, put your feet in the water, enjoy it, you ought to have a place where you can have a picnic or enjoy the sounds of the water spilling over in these different ponds. At this point, we have 3 of these concrete tables and benches that are being donated. We found a vendor for $350 for a table and 3 concrete benches, which I thought was extremely reasonable because everything we found up to that point was around $750 to $1,000. Again, 3 of those sets have already been donated, and so obviously we'd like to have permission to place those under the trees down there. It was suggested by Chris Eicher that we put a concrete slab under those so that they don't change position as the ground gets soft with rains and so on. Adding signage explaining the historical significance. Why is Hannah so important? Lampasas is here today because of Hannon. A lot of people don't really understand the whole context of that. So basically, there's a sign company that does this all over the country that we've located. The signs are 36 inches wide, and it would have pictures of the springs, the earliest one being with tents around the back of it, and then explaining the history of what was there. I'll show you just briefly here. It's not in your handout because I didn't have time for it. But this is a picture from 1912, and down here is the bathhouse that we're talking about. Right here, there's a cigar stand, so you could actually sit next to the pond and smoke a cigar. And over here, it says bottling and shipping. In other words, the water of Hannah Springs was bottled and shipped. Now, I know you can go over here to HEB and you can get crazy water number 4 from Mineral Wells, but you can't get Lampasas water unless you go home and drink it out of the faucet. So anyway, this is 1912, though. And up here in the north, there's a dance pavilion. So this is part of the history of Lampasas that you don't even see or even understand because there's nothing there showing it. And so the signage would actually celebrate these types of things that were part of the Hannah Springs history. The next thing is to pump the water out of the pond. Basically, I think we could use a fire truck to pump the water level down and do a significant clean on it. Now, what you'll notice there in this photo is that's a wood base that's down there in the bottom, plus a lot of trash down there, and the walls are about 1 inch thick in organic material. We have, as of yesterday, received a donation to spend 2 days doing a chemical clean of the entire inside of that pond. Now, I can tell you this is about probably $10,000 to $15,000 process. It's doing the same thing that cleaned the front of the Keystone Hotel, and to get that kind of donation, I think, was absolutely unbelievable. But in the process of doing that, there are a couple of things that we want to do, but one is down here on number 8. Here is a check, a blank check from 1893, and on this blank check from 1893, there's a fountain in the middle of Hannah Springs. Now, we don't know if this is a drawing. We don't know if it actually was ever there or not, but when we drain the pond, we'd like to go in and actually see if the base was there, if there's any structure that was there that would support the fact that there might have been a fountain down there in the center. So that was the 8th proposal. Again, it's just something we would look at. Create formal parking on Hackberry Street. There's a picture there that shows a truck drove up with his family. They're parked on the grass, and they went over, and they're walking around in the springs and walking around in the water. There's room there to put in parking. This, I understand, has been on the CIP and has been a recommendation of the Parks Board for a while, and they're in total support of that. And finally is to add safety signage around the pool. And I called it a pool here. It's not a pool, it's a spring. But the concrete around the wall around the spring was created in 1867, so it's been there a really long time. But having signage there, I think, is important for the safety of people that are going and enjoying the pool, looking at it. But it was never a swimming pool. It was always a drinking pool. That's where the water, the health water came from that pool. The swimming was always done at Hancock. Anyway, any questions that you have about the project? We would certainly love to have your support. At this point, there's no city funds that are involved in any things that we're trying to get done between now and July the 2nd.
The city funds come into play when we discuss the parking.
There'd be the parking, and it's my understanding that the hot funds could be used for the signage.
Possibly hot funds could be used for the parking as well, don't you think? And the utilization of the fire truck, Chief Smith, to pump out the... Ricky wants to do it.
The one thing that I heard you say that I'm a little concerned about is the chemical clean.
Okay.
I'm concerned about chemicals going down creek.
Sure. It is the same concentration as when you back flush Hannah Springs Pool. So it's not, and it's the only thing that it's attacking is the biological components that are actually in the pond. It doesn't affect fish. It doesn't affect grass or anything like that. But it is the same concentration, again, I can get you a quote on that from the guy that does it.
Well, that just is a little concerning because I don't think we use chemicals at all in cleaning Hancock. I think it's just power wash.
Well, that's true, but it's power washed every few days. This hadn't been cleaned in decades, and so it's got over an inch of stuff there. I mean, obviously, we can attempt to power wash it first and see if we can get anything off, but my concern is, much like the Keystone, and it was not even a bad case of it, is to actually get it out of there. The picture that you saw of the algae that's on top, that's there because it's growing from the algae that's already on the sides, and so we have to get that all off. Otherwise, we'll be kind of defeating the purpose, and we'll get the algae back.
I think Mr. Clark might have some
I
insight.
have two questions.
Yes, sir.
One is, did you check, Finley, did you check the liability issues of us removing the fence?
I believe Christina Perez did.
Are we covered on that?
I'll be able to speak to that. It says that Christina called TML and spoke with Dawn Hyatt. She is our TML underwriter. She said it was okay to take the fence down. It would not affect the city's insurance coverage. She did say the fence may have, she did say the fence may have been put as a recommendation from our assigned TML loss prevention specialist, or it may be a city policy to have it there. It's turned out we do not have a city policy to have that there. Either way, it would not affect insurance coverage.
Okay, my other question is in regards to the the spring itself, with you wanting to put some kind of fountain in there. When we did Hancock Park years ago, we put a head on the outlet of where that spring was, and it affected the flow of the spring. It started trying to go in another direction. We used a consultant out of UT, a professor there that came up here and took a look at things, and it had too much head on it, and he asked us to remove it, which we did. Also, we put the limestone pavers down in the bottom of that area. We had to drill holes in it to keep them stuck, to relieve the pressure of the springs coming up. And I'm wondering if y'all have talked to a consultant in regards to taking care of that spring, make sure there's no damage, no
At this point,
movement of it.
And the item here is to research if this actually even existed. So this isn't building a fountain or creating a fountain. It's simply saying, while we have the pond drained, let's go down there and see if in fact there was a fountain that was there or there's any remnants of a fountain.
Okay.
Honestly, there are people that really enjoy the flat quietness of that
I
water.
would love to see the improvements down there. I'm just want to make sure that we take every precaution not to do anything to hurt the springs.
Absolutely.
The one concern I also have is, do we have to do any environmental studies? Like, because we ran into a lot of that with Cooper Springs when we had the environmental and all that stuff. Are there any kind of studies that would have to be done before they could even start doing, not necessarily the cleaning, but with the building of the retention ponds?
I don't believe so, but we can follow up. We can inquire about that. And I think, if you don't mind me jumping in, but I think to Randy's point, sometimes even the level of water above that spring will have an impact on the spring. So the more pressure, the more head pressure that's put on that spring. So I think the point is we just have to be careful when we're dealing with that spring.
Yeah, the professor from University of Texas came up here free of charge and looked at it, got down in the pool, the free flow swim area, measured out of the springs. He calculated the flows and so on and so forth, and to make sure nothing was disrupted. And I would suggest that y'all maybe try to take
I have no
advantage.
problem with that. And at this point, there's nothing here that would affect, that should affect the flow at all. The cleaning is simply a cleaning. And anything structural that would change that would be something that we're not doing between now and July the 2nd.
Yeah, I just know this one was tremendously affected by the barometric pressure.
Okay.
And it would go up at night and flow higher and lower in the day.
Yeah, the current level, by the way, the current level of the spring is 3 feet lower than where it was in 1901. And if you look at the older photos, there's 3 foot of wall that was added to the top of that spring, and then the water level was raised 3 feet. You can still see the original spillway, that's there, it's not being used. So the water level actually has been lowered from what its original level was.
Yeah, I don't know what they did back then. I just want to be careful we don't mess anything
Absolutely.
up.
Nobody wants to shut down the spring,
Finley, do
believe
you
me.
still have the record? Excuse me a minute. Would you still
Speak into your microphone, please, sir.
I'm sorry.
Speak, they can't hear you.
What do you want? It is on. Anyway. What? Do you have the record of when we rehabbed all the springs, all the basic 3 within the city? Because a lot of that was done during Mike Talbot's time frame, and I remember there was a record of all the ones that we did, the bathhouse, that spring down there was Hannah Spring, and there was one other. We have constantly fought a battle with
Some
the
of
one-
it goes back even to Kim Fout's time, and
Yeah.
there were some files that were done.
What we have on the ground now is a result of them restoring. Mike Talbot came to the Parks Board at that time and said, we're going to lose them if we don't do something with them. A number of years ago, I know.
I'm very interested in seeing the improvements down there.
Okay, thank you. Well,
But I'm curious, nothing about, the plan that y'all have in place or anything else, but the springs, I know from being here, that was one thing in the city that almost divided this city when we went to dealing with the free flow pool and the spring head. And it didn't matter what we were doing. We were putting in chlorination systems. We were doing everything to it, and it got to be a very dividing situation, even to tear down the hostess house and fill in the free flow pool. So it's great that y'all bring it up. I've been on Parks Board forever until I got on council, but this goes back at least 20 years when we discuss it. I'm sorry Chris is not here because we had this discussion forever, and I'm very glad that you all are bringing forth something to be done. We had a wooden viewing platform up there and a ramp that went to it a number of years ago. We tore it down because of the infestation of it being wood and the yellow jackets.
Right.
And that's when that fence went up that you talk about. We didn't have the money to do anything else with it, nor did we know what we were going to do with it.
Sure.
Right there. So it's
yeah,
kind
Chris,
of a,
Chris explained
it's
that
been
to
a
me.
long-term thing.
Absolutely.
I will tell you that when I first got into it back in 1985, we cleared that property off, and it was a mesquite thicket with dead horses in it. And everybody thought we was crazy because of the floodplain and all of that, and it's one of the prettiest parks we have in town.
It absolutely is. I think we need to celebrate it.
Does council have any other questions or comments for Mr. Fish other than blessings and good luck?
I had one more comment about, okay, because you keep saying July 1st, July 2nd.
Right.
What is your timeline breakdown for the project?
What we'd like to do before July 1st and 2nd is remove the fence and do a topical clean of the algae off the top of the water, which is what we did. That's what Debbie and a bunch of volunteers did last year. But get that cleaned off, and there's been a push to possibly get some of the tables down there, which, again, we've got 3 sets already donated. We could get some down there under the big tree that's over on the west side. So we can certainly do that and make it look, really attractive. Obviously, a number of these items can't occur before July 2nd, but that I think would present very well on Day Tripper.
But you don't know when y'all would start on any of the other stuff if approved?
The contractor that we have to do the ponds would have to get with his schedule. He's already quoted the job. That's going to be funded by the foundation. So again, there's no cost to the city to do that.
But you just don't know a timeline yet?
Well, we needed to get permission first. I don't think we want to be digging dirt holes before July the 2nd if we can't get them finished by then. So it would occur after that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
We
Appreciate it.
appreciate you, Andy. Thank you very much. Item number 9, discussion regarding any item on the regular agenda. Does anyone wish to discuss anything on the regular agenda? At this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn workshop.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We will reconvene in 10 minutes for our regular session. We're going to go ahead and call to order the regular session of the governing body of the city of Lampasas. If you would all please rise at this time, and Chief Bailey, if you would lead us in invocation, please.
Please join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come to you tonight to thank you for all that you provide for us. Father, we ask that you heal those that are ill and that you heal the hearts of many within our country and within our world. Father, we ask that you watch over our meeting tonight and that you give us your guidance and your direction. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Moving on to public hearings and citizens' comments. Item 1.1, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter not included on the agenda may do so at this time. The city council may not deliberate on items presented under this agenda item. Again, the phone number to call in, 512-556-0332. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is not included on the agenda? Item 1.2, citizens' comments. Any citizen who desires to address the city council on a matter that is included on the agenda may do so at this time. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak on an item that is on the agenda? Moving to minutes, 2.0. 2.1, discussion and possible action concerning approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on June 8th, 2020.
I didn't notice any descriptions. I would make a motion to approve those.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. 3.0, consent agenda. 3.1, discussion and possible action to approve the second reading of an ordinance to consider approval, denial, or approval with modifications, a request for a specific use permit, SUP, to allow for an open storage, display, or work area for merchandise or machinery in an area zoned retail R, Lampasas County, Lampasas, Texas. The property is described as Block 3, LSC First Edition, Lots 1, 2, and Part of 3, commonly known as 108 South Key Avenue, Lampasas, Texas. Item 3.2, discussion and possible action regarding the monthly investment report for May 2020. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, or does anyone wish to pull an item?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Mr. White. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. 4.0, board and department reports. This month, item 4.1 is going to be Information Systems Monthly Report.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. The IT department has 2 full-time employees, myself, the IT director, and Christy Acevedo. She is the network administrator. We provide 24/7 support to 13 departments and in 15 buildings. And this fiscal year, up to May, we have had a total of 2,038 support tickets in comparison with last fiscal year in May of 1,450 support tickets. We provide hardware support for 92 PCs, 21 servers, 3 firewalls, 51 laptops, 63 printers, 16 wireless access points, 20 switches, 7 network attached storage devices, 10 tablets, 36 Verizon Air cards, and a lot of phones. We also provide support to over 30 software applications on our network. Out of the 15 buildings that the city has, 10 of those buildings are connected to the city network via fiber. We have 5 buildings currently that is not on the city network. due to their proximity, and a lot of them only have maybe a couple of PCs. We will be looking into, in the future, doing some type of air fiber to get them connected to the city network. So this fiscal year, projects that we completed included, we replaced 2 host servers. We installed security cameras at the municipal court. We installed an HVAC mini split in the IT building server room. We completed the fiber turbination project at the new water wastewater facility, and also installed a switch and configured the network at the water wastewater facility, which brought them onto the city network. We also terminated additional data power drops in the PD patrol bay. We upgraded all remaining Windows 7 PCs to Windows 10. We also implemented network management software tools. We configured and installed 2 wireless access points at the new water wastewater facility. We did several improvements to the IT building, including paint, flooring, a mini split, exterior doors, and that was one of our biggest projects for the year. If you haven't come by and saw that, you should. We would love to show it to you. We configured and replaced the PD video server and assisted with the migration to the cloud. We also replaced 9 desktop PCs, and we also implemented citywide cybersecurity training for all employees, and we have completed that and turned that into the state. We also configured and replaced a failing network-attached storage device, and assisted PD staff with the migration of videos off of our old video server to the cloud. Some of our daily and weekly, monthly tasks include responding and assisting with department IT help desk tickets. We do OS updates to hardware and software, content updates to the city and EDC website. We perform content updates to city social media pages. We perform monitor backups on all systems on the network, and routine maintenance on all hardware and software on the network. We update virus, spyware definitions, and apply security patches when needed. We also prepare reports and attend staff and council meetings. We also do continued education of network security threats. We attend many online continuing education webinars and trainings, and also continued research of applications and softwares to assist in all departments' needs. We also like to keep documentation on all of the software and hardware configurations on our network. We send out employee cybersecurity training and phishing tests. We obtain quotes for department purchases and projects. And we also do department budget and project planning. Network security. We subscribe and receive cybersecurity updates and alerts from CISA, also the Federal Bureau of Investigation Cyber Division. We're also subscribed to the Center for Internet Security, CIS, as well as the Office of the Chief Information Security Officer. We're subscribed to the Texas Department of Information Resources, DIR. Another thing we do to protect our network is we have network performance monitoring tools that is constantly scanning the network and sending alerts for vulnerabilities. We have enabled threat detection and response. We call that TDR to all of our machines on our network. We've enabled antivirus application to all machines on the network. Our firewall includes a total security suite package with high availability, as well as to our failover firewall. We monitor incoming and outgoing traffic on the network. We apply security patches to all machines on our network. We deploy firmware updates to all hardware on our network. We also have a CGIS compliant remote management software. And we monitor Office 365, Outlook security policies, anti-spam settings, threat protection, dashboard, and phishing emails. We also go through CGIS audits at the police department. Sometimes those are about every couple of years. Sometimes they can be year to year. It just depends on when they decide to visit us. We also just deployed the citywide cybersecurity training required by DIR and House Bill 3834. So some of our possible future projects include, of course, year to year, we will be required by the state to have all of our employees do the required cybersecurity employee training, and we'll submit that year to year. We plan to do all the upgrades to Microsoft Office licenses in the upcoming budget year. We also plan to assist PD with the Cardinal CAD ticket writer system migration, as well as replace a failed, outdated switch at City Hall. As well as we want to replace the city firewall and the backup firewall in the upcoming budget year because we plan to increase the city's internet bandwidth from 100 megabytes per second to 250 megabytes per second due to all the applications that we're running on our network right now, and we have limited bandwidth. So that is definitely going to be a priority in the upcoming budget year that we would like to plan for. And with that, we will need to upgrade our firewalls to support that increased bandwidth. In the future, we will be assisting the library with replacing their userful software hardware system, and also replacing our credit card swipe readers with chip readers, and installation of security cameras throughout the city, replace outdated utility receipt printers, and FY 21-22, we will be up for a free redesign of our city and our EDC website. We like to take full advantage of that since that is a free upgrade to us. And as far as social media website statistics, we currently have 6,006 Facebook followers, 568 Twitter followers. For the month of May, we have 15,537 page visits and 27,898 page views on our city website. Do you have any questions for me?
Doesn't look like it. Thank you, Monica. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
5.0 routine matters. 5.1 city manager's operational report.
Mayor and Council, I have a number of items. I will try to be brief and run through these. Council asked for a little follow-up at the last meeting regarding Hancock Pool. We wanted to let you know that the allowance of non-county residents has not resulted in any situations where we've been over occupancy there. Chris also reports that because of the cleaning, we can't get an extra day during the week to open the pool. And we have had one 12-year-old that has come to the pool unaccompanied by an adult that was turned away. And I believe that was all the questions that council had for us last time. Skate Park, we were invited to a meeting, I believe it was on the 11th. that the Wings of Eagles outreach organized, and the intent of the meeting was to work with stakeholders and the city to build a skate park. They have changed their leadership. Lisa Parker is now their president. I indicated to that group that I would report to council about the meeting and would seek your input in terms of, is this something that remains on the CIP? Do we need to push it back to parks, et cetera? So as you think about that, please let me know what your thoughts are to participate in their project. CDBG, we did get word this past week that we are in line for some possible funding. Our 19 and 20 CDB application is currently ranked to be funded in the event they fund at the same level and the same number of projects that they have in years past. So we're generally hopeful about it, but we will look for a look to be contacted for a site visit in August, and that will give us a clear indication of our project funding. Avenue E, we did have a pre-construction meeting on June 12th with QA Construction. They plan to start mobilization on or about June 29th. We think that they are likely to maybe start some construction in earnest at the end of that week or first part of the following week. It seems like we've been beating up that side of town here for the last several years. The good thing is this project will not start until west of Ridge, so we won't impact a lot of those key avenue businesses like we have in the past. However, we apologize in advance for disruptions and dirt and dust, and we have talked to the contractor about that and about trying to be very diligent about keeping that roadway watered down under construction. The time frame for that, I believe, is 270 days, Ricky. They are going to put together a schedule. We're hopeful that it'll be much less than that. I think they want to probably get out of here sooner than 270 days as well. Central Texas Water Supply Court, we've learned that Central Texas is appealing the decision. We knew that was going to happen once the final judgment was signed off on. The final judgment was signed off at the district court, I believe, on May 28th. Their intention was filed with the district court, I believe, June 9th, June 10th. And I may be looking a little too much into some of their filings, but it appears in several situations they've asked for items from the court recorder and made their intention know that they really don't want Lampasas participating in this case. They're calling into question our ability to intervene. They're asking for the court records related to the motion to strike the intervention, which we were successful in doing. So here we go again. This council certainly knows that this is going to take a while. We don't know, currently it's being scheduled, or it was appealed to the Third Court of Appeals in Austin. That court is a busy court, so there is a possibility it would be bumped to a different Court of Appeals. The CCR, it's available at your seat. Just we notify our community on their utility bills. We provide them a link to the website where they can access that. Just a couple of very quick things, that there are no violations noted in the report. Wastewater treatment facility, just as a follow-up item, we've actually gone through 2 seedings of that aeration basin. There was some improvement with first seeding. However, both Steve and Ann Van were not completely satisfied. They did a second seeding, and they think they're hopeful that that will be positive. They have been in contact with some of the local septic haulers and have indicated that, hey, we're about ready for a test dump. And so hopefully things will continue to improve there, and we will certainly inform you on the good and the bad as well. LCAD, they have sent over their budget. That is included in your packet, I believe. They intend to have a public hearing July 16th, and subsequently they will seek council approval. I believe council has 30 days to approve or deny or approve by no action. In the past, we have, actually the past couple of years, we've invited their staff to come over and present if council had any questions. Their current budget, or their draft budget, calls for about a 2.4% increase over previous year and about a 1.3% increase in salaries. council would like me to make that call, I'd be happy to do so. A couple of things from the library. The curbside virtual summer reading program is going well, about 50 weekly participants. And they're also doing some neat things regarding online story time and encouraging parents to post their kids' reading on social media. We have opened for a limited number of computers by appointment, and the foundation board has authorized the purchase of 10 additional hotspots because they are in high demand right now. We are starting to advertise for a prosecutor. This is something that frankly was put on the back burner in February, March. Council should plan to take a look at those firms or individuals maybe by the end of July. CIP, as I reported previously, we're going to have a meeting on Thursday. Our goal is to review the draft narrative, which is basically the summary. We hope to deliver that to council July 13th. Comp plan, we've gotten good feedback on the draft vision statement and recommendations. We had worked that through basically 3 conference calls with the consultants, and we also met with individuals and in small groups for additional comment. We would like to schedule a CPAC meeting, I believe, June 30th. Becky, is that our target? June 30th. If we can pull that off, we certainly will. We will meet without consultants at that time to do 2 things. One is it's been 90, 120 days since we met last, and we're going to introduce each other again and talk about what we had done before that, as well as do a review of the recommendations. The consultants will be invited back probably mid to late July, where they will take this kind of overwhelming list of recommendations and say, here's what we think it looks like in terms of how we implement it. What's the low-hanging fruit? What can we spread out over the next 5 or so years? So that's the next step. We want to also, LEDC. Mandy reported to you about what happened on the 17th related to the business park. We also wanted to let you know that they have reviewed their annual audit, which is actually a carve-out of your audit that you received this evening. They've reviewed ongoing development activity, year-to-date financial information, as well as reviewed some general data from Retail Coach related to leakage and market propensities. Pleased to welcome Jeremy Herring to the PD. He will be taking the position of patrol office. He's coming over from Lampasas County, where he's been for the last 13 years. The other thing, too, that I would want to let you know, I didn't include this in my report, but you do have an email in the back of my report as an attachment. It's an email from Judge Hoyer, who expresses his high praises for Dwayne Griffith at the cemetery. We all know Dwayne is highly deserving of this praise, and it doesn't matter if you're a friend of the county judge or not, but he'll take time and locate your sister's grave after 50 years. So great story and deserved praise. And I will, as I mentioned or alluded to earlier, I will be out of town July 3rd through about the 12th for my daughter's wedding. Thank you.
Thank you, Finley. 5.2, Mayor's comments. I don't have anything worthy to say this evening. 6.0, unfinished business. We don't have any of that either. 7.0, new business. 7.1, discussion and possible action regarding the first reading of an ordinance for commercial parking in residential areas.
Mayor, Council, as we discussed during a workshop, I ask that you consider a motion to approve the first reading of an ordinance from Chapter 78, amending the Chapter 78, Traffic and Vehicle, Article 3, Stopping, Standing, and Parking, amending Section 78-214, and adding provision to prohibit commercial vehicle parking in residential areas and provide exceptions for that with permit, and also providing for appeal, conflict, and severability clause with that. Also, with that, we will have to add the fee schedule amendments at the next city council meeting.
Do I have a motion from council regarding the first reading of an ordinance?
Make a motion to approve the first reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. Thank you, Chief Bailey. 7.2, discussion of possible action regarding acceptance of the annual audit. I believe we discussed the audit during the workshop session. Do I have a motion to accept the audit?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Ms. Keeney. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Mr. White? Aye. That's unanimous. 7.3, discussion of possible action regarding use of joint use facility fund for media replacement at Central Texas Water Supply Corp. Water Treatment Plant.
Mayor and council, this is a request primarily from Kempner Water Supply Corp., although city staff certainly thinks this makes sense. It's an eligible expenditure from this fund. This fund was actually set up during the closing of the 2005 agreement where Kempner purchased some Central Texas equipment. Kempner is the custodian of this account. However, both entities have to provide approval for an expenditure from this account. The use of it would be for the Central Texas Plant Number 1, where our water is treated for media replacement as well as some pump improvements. The percentage that we would pay of the total expenditure of 124 is based on the monthly calculation, which is the water we received from Central Texas divided by the total water produced by Central Texas. So the 47,000 is a result of that calculation in terms of the overall expense. Our expenditure normally would be on the order of about 30 to 35%. It's a kind of a dovetail calculation based on the water Kempner produces by the water that they deliver to us. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have a motion from council. Is council awake?
I'll make a motion to approve the use of the Joint Use Facility Fund.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for Mr. Williamson. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
It is unanimous. 7.4, discussion of possible action regarding approval of permit from City Council to allow Pyrotechnico Fireworks Incorporated to conduct the annual firework display on Wednesday, July 8th, 2020, as cited in Lampasas Code of Ordinance, Article 3, Fireworks, Section 38-67, 38-68, and 38-69.
Mayor, council, I'm here tonight to discuss possible action regarding the approval of permit to allow Pyrotechnico to discharge fireworks inside the city limits on June 8th, Wednesday during Spring Hoe. In your package, you'll find their insurance policy, the site plan, the state fire marshal's requirements. It's the same company that we've had for the last 2 years. They do a very good job.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Ronnie.
Thank you.
Item 7.5, discussion of possible action regarding Campbell Park improvements.
Mr. Fish could not stay for the regular agenda, so I'll stand up in his stead. And Mayor and Council, just to review what staff heard, there was a concern about an environmental assessment or impact that we may ask a few questions related. The other thing that I certainly cannot speak for LAFTA, and I would not expect council to speak for LAFTA regarding the relocation of the tractor. So that may be a consideration that council would incorporate in a motion. In discussing this with Chris last week before he went out of town, I think he was in favor of it, provided that we did some due diligence on it. But with that,
It's my understanding from Mr. Fish's presentation that LAFTA did approve this, but I would like for staff to follow up, and they've not.
Well, not the moving of the tractor.
Not the moving of the tractor?
If it comes to where we would need to move the tractor, depending on what happened, we'll discuss it at that time. But there's no reason to move it if there's no need to move it.
I will recommend that council and city respect LAFTA's wishes in regards to anything at Campbell Park.
But I think what we'd be looking for is, without objection, a motion for staff to work with Heritage Foundation to proceed with the project.
I have a motion from council.
I recommend approval for staff to work with Heritage Foundation for the cleanup and improvements.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments?
The one comment I'd like to make is I want to be really careful about chemicals in that spring. I think that's a concern. Other than that, I think it's a great thing.
That's understood, and we will go ahead and remove the fence based on the comments we received from the intergovernmental risk pool.
Comments, Ms.
I'm just interested in protection of the spring, and I would move to approve what they've asked for in here as far as the table and benches and that kind of thing.
That's covered under the improvements in the original motion. So I have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
That is unanimous. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Oh, second.
I have a motion from Ms. Monroe, a second from Ms. Toops. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.